10 o'clock, right. Welcome everybody to Family and Children's Services. We have a number of apologies. Who's missing?
Yeah, I have apologies from Councillor Ball, Councillor Dale, Councillor Daly, Councillor Dunbar, Reverend Lennox, Lynn Houghton and John Sanderson.
Right, so hopefully we'll have a quick meeting. So without any further ado, disclosure of members' interests. I see none. Forward plan, key decisions. Chris, do you want to comment?
There is an item that's not on this version of the forward plan, and that is the outline business case for Astley Community High in Whitrig Middle School. That will be coming to the committee on the 21st of April, which is the extra meeting we agreed to at the last meeting. And that will go to Cabinet on the 26th of April. And that's the only thing that's not on this version of the forward plan.
So that's the 21st of April. Keep that in your diary. Okay, anything else? Anybody wish to comment? I see nobody. Right. Item 4, Berwick Partnership Organisation. First, I'll go to Kath McAvoy-Carr and then Sue Anderson.
Thanks, Chair. Just very quickly, members, just to be reminded that there is a significant amount of investment planned for the Berwick Partnership in relation to ensuring sustainability of education for the future, and obviously that's something that we can't take lightly. There has been a significant amount of work undertaken with head teachers and with governing bodies and also interested and invited stakeholders to get us to the position that we are in today. And although I understand that some people might think that hasn't gone quickly enough, I think that the process is needed and necessary in order for us to be able to make sure that we're going down the right process to get Berwick the investment that is well needed. So I will hand over to Sue to give us an outline of where we've got to and what the next steps are.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll just run through a short presentation as well, just to support, maybe. No, I won't. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thanks. Yeah, so really just to pick up on a couple of points that Kath made in terms of the purpose of the report. So this is to request and the next period of informal consultation that would take place with wider stakeholders in the Berwick Partnership to establish whether any models of organisation of schools that may be brought forward at a later date for consultation should consist only of 3-tier option or a 2-tier primary second model of education for the partnership. We will also be looking at some key areas around special educational needs, and I'll come on to some more detail on that in the presentation. Post-16 and actually post-18 education, there's also an opportunity to look in more depth as part of this process as to how those opportunities can be enhanced, as well as early years provision, ensuring the viability and sustainability of our early year provision within the partnership as well. And all of those will be included in this first stage of a wider phase of consultation. And as Kath has already said, the report also sets out the findings of the meetings that have taken place with schools in the Berwick Partnership since April 2021 to discuss the organisation and organisational issues facing the partnership and to identify any potential models of organisation that could address the issues that the schools and the whole partnership face. The results of the informal consultation with parents and the wider community in the area of Berwick are also included within the report. So some of the key issues, again, it's already been mentioned, is the substantial amount of capital that has been identified by the local authority to invest in the system in Berwick. Therefore, nearly £40 million of council capital funding has already been identified within the medium-term financial plan. But before committing to such investment in these schools, Cabinet will want to be assured that organisational structure of the Berwick Partnership is viable and sustainable in the medium to long term, and through the retention of the majority of students in all phases, and in an agreed structure that's most likely to lead to improved educational outcomes for all children in the Berwick area. In order to identify the most likely structures to provide such assurances, officers have been working with head teachers in their capacity as education professionals and school governors since April 2021, and a full timetable of the events that have happened are contained in paragraph 16 of your report. Throughout the work undertaken in the Berwick Partnership, head teachers and school governors understood that whatever structure was ultimately agreed, the possibility would have to be within the context of some other fundamental changes, such as the reduction of the number of schools in the partnership, including some schools may be moving to other partnerships, as noted in paragraph 3 of the report. Really, just to move on to some of the challenges that need to be addressed by the Berwick Partnership, and again, these were all identified in consultation with all the head teachers and governing bodies, and again set out in more detail in paragraphs 11 to 15 of your report. But I think there is a great understanding both within the head teachers and the responses we got to the public consultation that there is a need for improving educational outcomes. And again, there's some more detail on in paragraph 11 that demonstrates the current performance of all schools in the partnership. Another key area is the viability and sustainability of all schools and the partnership, and this is in light of the falling birth rate, not only across the whole of Northumberland but particularly in the far north and far west of our county. So this fall in the birth rate is leading to increased surplus capacity in our schools. And with our predicted data, it shows that we'll have more than 128 places just in the reception class for the year 2025, as we will only have a cohort of 150 children in that year. So again, you can understand that there needs to be some review about the number and types of schools and where they actually are. Another area identification that needs addressing in order to meet children's need closer to home is around special educational needs. We currently have 102 children who have EHCPs in Berwick. That's just about 3.8% of the school population, which is in line with our Northumberland average of around 4%. Of those children, 58 of them are in special school. 38 attend the Grove, but there are 22, which is 38% of those with EHCPs that have to travel outside of Berwick in order to attend school, and over half of them have ASD or SEMH. So part of this project moving forward will be to look at how we can address the needs of those children closer to home by expanding our special education needs provision within the Berwick Partnership. Post-16 and post-18 educational offer, I think elected members, particularly when this funding was identified for Berwick, was very interested in how we could actually enhance our education offer to post-16, post-18 in order, again, to keep more children in their local community. And this consultation also gives us the opportunity to look at those a broad range of qualifications that could be delivered more closely to home for the children and young people. And again, early years was also identified in ensuring that we have a sustainable offer and the quality of provision across the partnership. Again, I think post younger than 2, there is some real concern around the capacity to offer childcare, particularly in the Berwick area. So we'll also expand the brief to look in more detail at early years at the next stage. In working with the head teachers and governing bodies, we felt that we needed some the vision for change for Berwick. We felt this was such a large project, and so we've also spent the time working with the head teachers, governing bodies, in order to develop a vision for change for the project that we're going to be delivering. And again, I don't think anybody can argue with the slide that you can see there. So everybody wants to see improving education outcomes for everybody, the sustainability of the education system across the Berwick Partnership in the long term, improving and extending the SEND offer for children so that their needs can be met more locally at home, and significantly reduce travel times for those young people. Again, the key to success of any project is about engaging the community, and again that is a key driver behind this, and ensure that the community is fully engaged in the process and they build an understanding of all the issues in order that any changes that come as a result of this, that the community support in order that all the schools can actually thrive into the future. Again, ensuring that schools work together to develop a partnership and create a sustainable model for the future. The work that we've already undertaken with the head teachers, particularly some of the workshops that we've done, has really started to build those relationships and given us a real good foundation to move forward at the next stage of this consultation. And last but not least, what we need to do is ensure the best value for NCC capital investment, and therefore having conversations about a system and investing in a system that's fit for purpose for the future as well. So we feel that all of that, all those vision items there deliver what we're expecting for the project. What we have done with the partnership, just like to go in a little bit more detail of some of the options that we actually looked at with the partnership heads and the governing bodies. So the next few slides talk about the individual options that we looked at for organisational change within the Berwick system. So the first option we looked at was a mixed economy, and that would mean potentially different systems of organisation across the partnership. You know, some suggestions that in the town of Berwick could be organised in one way, say primary, secondary, for instance, and then in the more rural areas that you know, a three-tier system could operate. So we looked at that as an option for the partnership, and again you can see some of the feedback directly from the head teachers and the governing bodies there on the slide, that really there was no support to move forward with a mixed economy. People felt that it would be confusing. It didn't address the issue that we have with the fall in roles and the drop in the birth rate. Real concerns about the lack of curriculum continuity, different systems across one single partnership. Also concerned about pupil mobility, that people would move a lot more around a system. A lot more transition issues to manage for schools, and they felt that it would be a slow death for some schools within the partnership. And again, you can see the governing body responses at the bottom, that they absolutely agreed with the head teacher's view and didn't feel that a mixed economy was the right way forward for the investment in the education system in Berwick. Option 2, again, was the primary secondary option that we talked about in terms of the organisation there. A number of pros and cons. This would mean the whole partnership changing, but again, a number of schools, we then asked the governing bodies to come back with their responses, and this option is supported by 9 of the schools, would prefer a 2-tier model of organisation. There are also 4 governing bodies that preferred to retain the 3-tier system, and then 3 schools that didn't express a preference at all. So we felt that this option is an option that should be taken forward to the next stage to explore more, because it does have a body of support, although not a unanimous body of support for the partnership. And then option 4 we talked about, there was a very much a driver from the community in Berwick around trying to convert the high school to become a local authority maintained school again. The legislation wouldn't allow for us to do that as a local authority, but we did look at another alternative option that meant we could deliver secondary education in Berwick. So option 4 was to look at merging 2 of the middle schools and expanding their age range. Again, there was no support to progress this option, that the schools themselves and the governing bodies felt that they would create too much competition in a system that was already not financially viable, and therefore they were concerned that there wouldn't be sufficient pupils to go around, and it would add more, I suppose, wouldn't gain the support of the community either. So all the governing bodies again supported the head teachers in their view around not taking that option forward. Sorry, there's a slide that I think I've missed off the presentation. Yes, I have. There was also a further option, a campus option, and that was delivered. That was an option that was developed by the school partnership themselves and head teachers. So that looked to bring a number of schools together, all on one site. They suggested which schools they were, but you know that model could be flexible. But again, the head teachers felt that there would be some merit in that model, but actually that campus model could be under a 3-tier system or a 2-tier system, and therefore they felt that perhaps the fundamental decision around what system of organisation schools should be organised in Berwick needed to happen first. So this campus model could come back onto the table once the fundamental decision around the system. So therefore, I think we've got support for 2 models, a 3-tier system and a 2-tier system. And that is the basis for this consultation, is to go and have that in principle discussion with the merits of the 2 tiers, both systems, before we make any recommendations moving forward. We also, as part of this exercise, carried out a survey for the general public, as well as parents, as well as school staff. So this survey was carried out in the autumn of 2021, and it was to gauge the key priorities when considering school organisation in the area, and to assist us in formulating the next steps in the process. As a result of the survey, we got 436 responses were received from consultees, with the vast majority of these coming from parents in the Berwick Partnership. The results there that you can see on the slide were questions that we asked that were very much yes or no responses. But as you can see, the vast majority of consultees all agreed with the priorities that we've actually set to achieve as part of the project in the Berwick community. We also asked a question around those priorities and asked people to rank them in order of importance to them. So the next slide talks about the 6 statements that we made, and ranked number 1 was improving outcomes for all children, whatever their ability. A system that attracts and retains the best teachers was the second ranked option. School buildings that are appropriate for teaching and learning for the 21st century came 3rd on the list. Improved and extended provision to meet the needs of children with SEND in the area close to Berwick, again came number 4. Schools that have excellent facilities that are shared with the local community. So again, I suppose a vision around sharing the community, the school's facilities with the community, and then making sure that schools are large enough to stand fluctuations within pupil numbers, and that came bottom of the list for the community in Berwick when we asked those questions. On top of that, we also asked 2 more open questions in the survey that required a specific response. So the question, what changes, if any, do you think could be made to the Berwick Partnership to improve outcomes? And again, you can see some of the, the highlighted areas there. Implement a 2-tier system. A 3-tier system doesn't match the national curriculum. Recruit and retain good teachers. Invest in school buildings. Support the 3-tier system as the issues with Key Stage 4. Have better and more facilities for children with SEND. We then also asked them what would be a priority for investment in education. So again, invest in building and facilities, but particularly invest in SEND facilities and a new SEND school. Had a lot of support, not only for the community, but very much unanimous support from all the head teachers in the Berwick Partnership, that they felt a new build school for the Grove School in Berwick to meet the needs of children was something that was a key priority for everybody. And again, improved facilities in the 3-tier system as well, and also investing in education resources. Just some of the highlights, but again, there's more detail in your report. So moving swiftly on then. So as a result of all the work that we've done over the last 12 months, we now want to move forward with the next steps of the project. So in light of that work that has been carried out with head teachers and governing bodies of the Berwick Partnership, and as a result of the community survey that I've just shared with you, it appears that we're faced with just 2 favoured options of organisation of schools. And that is the continuation of a 3-tier system, although there would need to be changes that would address the falling pupil numbers, the education standards and investment in buildings, and also the whole partnership reorganisation to a 2-tier system, primary, secondary. But again, that system would also have to have relevant proposals that would also address the issues of falling roles, education standards and investment in the building. And again, another issue that has arisen through the work is a question on whether Belford Primary School, at their request, they made a request to be considered to be part of the ANIC partnership. And again, Wooler First School and Glendale Middle School feel that they serve both Berwick and ANIC. And again, the question as part of the next stage of consultation, should all three of those schools remain within the Berwick partnership? So that it is therefore recommended that the views are also sought through this informal consultation at the next stage on whether Belford Primary, Wooler First and Glendale Middle should remain within the Berwick partnership, or would it be more appropriate for the schools to become part of the ANIC partnership? And that will actually form part of the next stage if approved by Cabinet next week. And I think that is everything I've got to say. Thank you.
Right. Guy, I've got to go straight to Guy, who is the portfolio holder for education, as well as being from that neck of the woods. Guy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I should point out I'm the councillor for Bangor, so I am the Berwick Partnership member councillor. This is the culmination of a lot of work. It started in 2019 when the Len portfolio holder announced £15 million to invest into the buildings of Berwick High School, and that has expanded from then in the 3 years to now be a whole partnership approach rather than just focusing on the high school, because of course it was recognised that there are structural issues within the partnership that need addressed. We have 17 schools in that partnership, ranging from Holy Island First School with 2 pupils up to Berwick Academy with 500 pupils. There's a falling pupil roll. It's estimated there'll be 330 less pupils in 2029 than there is now. And to compound that issue, 28% of the secondary age pupils are going to schools either in Alnwick, Duns or Eyemouth. It's quite normal for me driving into Berwick for work every morning to see pupils with different uniforms on standing at the bus stops rather than heading to Berwick Academy. And that's something we really need to address and reverse. New school buildings are only one part of a school system. We're also trying to support the high school in their educational offer. The high school has just moved up a tier in the Ofsted ratings, and I have every confidence that will continue. The leader of the council and myself are heading to Berwick Academy tomorrow to meet the head teacher to talk through various ways we can support them. So this is about fixing the education in Berwick for the next 50 years. If we don't do it now, it's not going to happen. And I just really would like to encourage anyone who's watching this and all members of the public, parents, teachers, educational professionals to take part in our consultation if and when it is approved by Cabinet in the next few weeks.
Right. There's clarity. Anybody wants to go? Yes.
Yes. Hi, thanks Sue and thanks Guy. We went through this in the West Northumberland partnership in 2017, I'm sure you remember. And I was part of the STARS campaign group actually to save the middle schools because we saw the value of them. And so I've got 2 questions and then 2 suggestions as well that came out of my experiences there. The first one is the 13 first schools. Thank you. The 13 first schools. Now, there's a suggestion that some of them may move to another partnership. I'm wondering how many of those might be earmarked for closure as well. That's not apparent in this. And my concern there is first schools are obviously very important to rural areas, as are middle schools. And, you know, once you take away that, parents are reluctant to move into villages in rural areas. And that's what we saw very much was the worry, the big concern with our consult, that some of these were earmarked for closure. And I think falling birth numbers are not helped by taking away schools from areas where families need to move in. My second observation is that the 4 schools that objected to becoming 2-tier, I'm presuming they were mostly the middle schools that may disappear completely because of the switch to 2-tier. And certainly when we looked at the National Middle Schools Forum, their outcomes were advantageous by being in a 3-tier system in lots of rural areas. As opposed to a 2-tier system. So the results are there that support middle schools being absolutely beneficial to kids. In fact, when Suffolk County Council switched to 2-tier in, I think, 2018, 2019, standards actually fell. I mean, I know we've had COVID and stuff, but they did do that switch and it wasn't advantageous, so they switched from 3-tier to 2-tier. So the stats do support middle schools as opposed to 2-tier, but I do understand the economics of this, and I do, you know, support anything to help failing schools. I don't know whether if you stick clearly thriving middle schools in this instance onto a struggling, I know it's moved up a tier, academy, I don't know if that's going to fix the problem, is my only concern. Two suggestions would be that when we did do this, we had the consult, obviously it's important to roll it out to the community and not just keep it online, and we had a drop-in at the Mart, which was the Hexham Mart, which was very, very successful, incredibly well attended. But what we struggled with was schools actually doing their own consults with the parents, and help would be really appreciated with giving those schools the resources to be able to do that. I was governor of a middle school at the time, and we had to set up our own, and so anything to do with actually coming onto the school sites and helping that would be beneficial, I think. And finally, we ended up, as you probably know, with a multi-economy school, and I don't think it confuses parents. I think choice is a huge thing in education, and parents feel empowered by that. And if you had a kind of multi-form entry on a campus-style model with maybe one of the middle schools that's nearest the academy, so I understand, and the Grove School as well, which clearly has outgrown capacity, then you have the best of both worlds. You still have the 3-tier system, you still have the 2-tier system, and both together seem to be the preferred options. So you're retaining that diverse choice. There you go. Thank you.
Right. Sue, do you want to come back at that?
Yeah, I think you're going to step too soon for us, actually, because what we're here to talk about is the principles around the education. We're not getting into the detail of models. We're not talking about school closures in detail. This is, you know, part of the learning on some of the consultations that we've done is making sure the community completely understand the challenges that are faced by the school partnership, and not actually diving right into the detail of what that means to individual schools. What we're trying to do with this consultation is to ensure that everybody understands the challenges and are given the opportunities to come forward with their ideas about how those challenges can be addressed. Very much so what you've just said here today, that is exactly what we'll be asking the members of the community. We do plan to do face-to-face events with the community. There will be the opportunity, probably 2 or 3 events that we'll be running in the Berwick area, because it's such a large catchment area that we'll be doing some in the south, some in the town as well. Mm-hmm. There will be events for staff, there will be events for unions, and obviously our local elected members are, are part of that process as well. So yes, very interested. Look forward to receiving your response to the consultation. I'm sure there's some good ideas there. Thank you.
Yeah, this is all about consultation at this moment in time. Yes, sir.
I think I would just say that we really welcome this next step for the community. I think one of the things is that there's almost been such a delay in trying to make a decision, and I think from our schools' perspective, I can speak only for Church of England schools in that sense, to at least have something physically happening is really important, and I think it shows the commitment to the local authority to try and find a longer term solution for that community. I think the uncertainty over time has probably meant a drop in numbers, whereas at least now the community knows they're being taken incredibly seriously. I have attended a number of the meetings with the schools, obviously from our perspective, and I think we've welcomed the fact there's been an ongoing dialogue, but now I think it's the right time to actually say to the community, what is it that we actually want to do here, and how quickly then can we achieve it? And I do think the process has been really open, and I think a lot of lessons have been learned from historic consultations, and I think we're in a much better place this time.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was at the actual Hexham event that you referred to, and I do recall when you parked your horse box on the lawn out here without permission, but I don't think we'll get to that point yet. Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, as Sue said there, about this being a challenge, and we don't do things by halves, and this isn't an overnight thing, and I think just demonstrating the size of the task involved, when Guy said, starting this back in 2019, this has been a significant task. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is, the recommended next steps there mention about a number of schools, the consideration of it moving from the Berwick Partnership to the Alnwick Partnership. If that was the case, does that then bear any significance, any change into the information for consideration on the Berwick partnership? Does that, you know, move the goalpost at all? Would that change any of the recommendations or change any of the information in the report or the recommendations or anything like that if those schools were to come out of the Berwick partnership? Thanks.
Yeah, it wouldn't change anything obviously in these recommendations, but obviously it'll be very interesting to see what the community feel when they're asked such a straightforward question. I think we receive a lot of, I suppose, parental complaints, concerns around, particularly from Glendale, Wooler area, to get their children into the ANIC partnership. That's seen to be parental choice, and therefore this has given us the opportunity to formally ask that question as to which partnership that that Glendale particularly want to be in. Belford are already a primary school, and they naturally see themselves feeding into ANIC, which is already organised into a two-tier system. They feel that transition is better for them. Currently, those children don't qualify for home-to-school transport in the main, depending where they live. This change would probably would look at that as a separate issue. So yeah, there will be some changes, but we would be recommending that at the next stage, not altering anything within the current report.
Yes.
Yeah. Sue, it was interesting when the response for the rating came back. The second point there was a system that attracts and retains the best teachers, and I think my experience. I worked for many years in the three-tier system and the two-tier system, and as the three-tier system continues to shrink, particularly within our local authority, the career progression for staff becomes significantly limited. And I think what we've got to do is look to the bigger picture and think, well, you've got a geographical issue as well. Berwick is significantly far away from the other centres. So therefore, if you commit yourself to move up there, the chances are you're limiting your choice of career opportunities. Whereas the two-tier system will enable them to have that opportunity to move across much more and possibly retain within the partnership, because obviously there'll be opportunities for senior leadership and so on there. So personally, I think that if you want to look at retention, I think the two-tier system is possibly the better option than a three-tier system, which is shrinking alarmingly, not just nationally, but within the local authority. And I expect it's interesting as well. We talk about systems being fit for the 21st century, but I think it's nearly 100 years since the Haddo report, which actually has this same discussion, 1926, about primary and secondary and two-tier. That's when it was first mooted, and that's 100 years later. We're still having this discussion about two-tier and three-tier. And I think, as Guy said, this is an opportunity. There's huge investment. We've got to get it right. And I think it's crucial that staff and staff opportunities and career progression is part of that. And I think the two-tier system offers that much more than potentially the three-tier.
Kath.
Thanks, Chair. Just really to reiterate and just to make it very clear so that we are all on the same page. Really. This is a complex issue, and the conversations that we've had this morning kind of recognise or reinforce the fact that this is a complex issue. If there'd been an easy resolution to this, we'd have found it years ago. We've been talking about it since I was the DCS, and that's a long time. So I just want to be clear that this is not a local authority-led process that we are saying this is the outcome that we want to achieve, because I think that's always the view of our communities, is that the local authority have a preconceived idea and that we're just going to go down that route no matter what. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to influence the Berwick education system. and not just within Berwick itself, but also in the surrounding areas. So we are, the reason why it's been so carefully considered and why we've taken our time over this, and Paul, I liked your analogy there to it being transparent, is because we want to make sure that we fully understand what our children, our parents, our carers, our communities, our schools and our governing bodies, and equally those stakeholders who are out in the community actually really want or feel would be in the best interest. We're never going to get a homogenous view. Nobody's ever going to agree entirely on all of this, but this is an opportunity to take a carefully considered approach to ensuring that we've got all those views and we can collect those and we can have further conversations about where that takes us in the future. So the 2-tier, 3-tier argument will continue, but we want that opportunity to be able to reflect with our communities about what that means and moving forward. So,
Right, you've spoken.
Oh, is
Go on, I'll let you. If you
it was just to set feedback and say actually you did listen in the Hexham consult. That was very, very clear and it was fabulous. You listened to the community and the outcome of that is exactly what the community chose. So thank you.
Okay, can you turn your mic up, Susan? Right, I'm ready to move on to this. I can't see any other speakers. So are we happy that this goes to the next stage? Yep, agreed. Okay, right, next item. 5, family hubs in Northumberland. I've got on my list Jackie McCormick. Yes, floor's yours.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Jackie.
Can you make
microphone.
Sorry, apologies. Hi everybody, I'm Jackie McCormick. I'm a senior manager within children's social care, managing early help and prevention. And so the main part of that role is to manage our Sure Start children's centres and our early help family worker teams. And I'm here today to update you on our developments around moving to a family hub model. So in Northumberland, the development of family hubs has begun through a strategic steer from the local authority, but most importantly, alongside a wide range of multi-agency partners, so such as the head of midwifery, health visiting through Harrogate District Foundation Trust and through primary mental health. So our intention in Northumberland is to rebrand our children's centres to become family hubs. A family hub is a place where children, young people and their families can go when in need of help and support. But it's not just about the buildings, it's about help being available to all families who need it, however old their child, in a recognisable, non-stigmatising way. So basically, this is a no wrong door model. So wherever the family go to, across all of our services, they will get a consistent message around young childhood and young people's development. So for instance, if they go into a family hub, they will see a midwife, a health visitor, an early years practitioner, a youth worker, all working together, giving out the same messages. So why are we moving to a family hub model? So the focus purely on early years in the Sure Start Children's Centre model doesn't really reflect the realities of family life. Significant needs still emerge during a child's primary and secondary school years, regardless of how well they experienced early childhood. Early help for such issues is vital to prevent problems from spiralling out of control and derailing life chances. So local efforts to maintain an effective network of children's centres has ensured that families under 5 benefit from a coordinated offer. But this needs to be available to all families, regardless of the ages of their children. And there's more, obviously, there's more background and detail on page 3 of your report. So what's the current landscape and what are likely to be the main changes? So we're very fortunate in Northumberland to retain a network of children's centres. And whilst children's centres in Northumberland have continued to operate throughout the pandemic, sometimes budget pressures have resulted in a reduced offer, which has become more targeted. The number of children's centres has already been reviewed, and this started from about 2017 onwards. Way back, we used to have 26 children's centres. We now have 12 main centres, but we have outreach posts across rural fire stations, as some of you know. But this is a good move because it's become more streamlined, more targeted, and also more sophisticated in terms of developing an evidence base. We use evidence-based programmes and collecting the impacts and the outcomes on children and families. So the Family Hub model seeks to bring together partners to coordinate an offer which meets the needs of local families, regardless of age. So this is a 0 to 19 to 25 offer. The range of services are likely, therefore, to better reflect current needs of families, including work around relationships and other pressures. So what is a family hub? So the policy context for a family hub came to us about a year ago with the publication, the national policy context, with the publication of the Best Start for Life, referred to quite usually as the Andrea Leadsom report. There's a National Centre for Family Hubs, and that's led by the Anna Freud Centre. And we also work with the Early Intervention Foundation. So they were the national policy context. The local policy context is obviously our Children and Young People's Plan, and also our newly revised Early Help Strategy. So a family hub then, it's a modular, flexible approach. It will keep changing, it's organic, it will keep shifting. It's a central access point for integrated services, whether that's a building named a family hub, or a building with another title, or a virtual access point. So, what's happened so far and how are we developing family hubs? So early help managers in Northumberland have been researching and gathering information since the Best Start for Life report was launched in April 2021. We're part of a nationwide network which provides support, guidance and lots of conference and webinars. A project team has already been established. This is called the Family Hub Implementation Group, chaired by Mary Connor, Head of Service, and a project plan is in place. We've then created 5 very multi-agency stakeholder groups following a mapping exercise. And the stakeholder groups will drive forward their lead areas using our Signs of Safety mapping, using the Early Intervention Foundation and the Anna Freud Centre. And they've given us a framework to work towards. So through the formation of these implementation groups and stakeholder groups, this has led us to bring together agencies that support children, young people and their families, to share the responsibility to take collective action whilst generating solutions to common problems. And it's important to have this collective action, but embedded in an understanding of local population needs, diversity and the landscape of Northumberland. Last year, we were successful with securing a regional bid. We received £119,000 and we've developed 5 clinical rooms. So we're starting to develop rooms to be used by midwifery and by health visitors. And those groups of staff are starting to move into our children's centres. We've developed softer reception areas with that money, and starting to really think about the move from 0 to 5 to youth spaces and starting to consult with the youth. We've also spent £40,000 on an IT infrastructure to continue our virtual delivery. So during the pandemic, we did a lot of virtual delivery of some of our programmes. So some of our parenting programmes, we shifted and we delivered them at sort of 7 o'clock at night. So dads, partners could partake in those parenting groups. And it was really successful in the rural areas. So they didn't have to travel miles and miles to the nearest children's centre. They would log online. And we're really keen to carry that on. Part of that work was to work alongside Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council on sharing the expertise that we've developed during that virtual offer. And we're going to keep that relationship going with them because we've done some really good work on a practitioner level. So in summary then, what we're looking at, what we're intending is a network of services, organisations and buildings with shared systems and processes. We're building on our already strong existing partnership, services and their expertise. And we want to build the capacity within our existing resources, so both within our families and our services. And we're all signing up to work in a family-friendly way with no wrong door, relational practice, and to ensure that families get the right service at the right time. And I'm just going to end with some really positive news that's just happened. We found out last Friday that our local authority is eligible for funding from the government's Family Hub and Start for Life programme, which was announced about a year ago. This is going to be a 3-year programme until 2025 to develop a step change in outcome for babies, young people, parents and carers. And I hope from what I've said today, you can already see we're on a really steady, secure footing to be able to take this forward. This funding is available for 75 upper tier local authorities. And following a webinar that just happened yesterday, there will be funding attached to this, and there's more details to come over the coming weeks. That's really exciting news.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds excellent news. Looking around the room, Councillor Renner-Thompson, and right.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is a bit of a hot topic. It's a shame Councillor Ball's not here because she asked me about this at the last full council meeting when we were talking about youth services. I was lucky enough to go to Prodo Children's Centre just last week and talk to the staff, talk about how the children's centres work now and how they're going to work as family hubs going forward. And it's really game-changing, excellent stuff. So at the moment, you know, it's mainly babies and very young children. Well, this is going to be 0 to 19. And it's not just going to be the council, it's going to be a one-stop shop with NHS, midwifery. People could go there and get financial advice if they need it. It's going to be quite transformative in parts of the county. And for the public services, it stops the duplication of resource and services. So instead of 3 different people doing the same thing, all going to be in one place, making sure that people can get the support they need. So I really welcome it, and I really welcome the government's announcement of the £300 million that we can dip into to build this.
Okay, Councillor Dunn, then Councillor Watson.
Thank you. As I understand it, we've currently got 12 children's centres which will transform into the family hubs. Is there a plan to have more of these, or is that enough, basically? Secondly, my question is, when we mentioned outreach centres, where are they? Can you be a bit more explicit as to where they are and
It's in the report, I think.
what they will do? Yeah, but I just can't take it all in. I just want to hear it. Thank you, Councillor Dodd. However, my main worry is that, given that we're witnessing recruitment and retention problems through all these social work, you know, and that type of thing, nursing staff, etc., can we really be sure that we can adequately staff these hubs going forward?
Right, I'll go to Jackie. Or who?
I'll let Mary answer some
Right,
of that.
okay.
And come in.
Okay, so in terms of the 12, to your first point in relation to the 12 centres, I mean, I think what we're very clear about is that this isn't just about a building-based model. It's about actually both virtual and outreach as well. And that whilst we have 12 buildings that will be rebranded as family hubs, that the staff will use other buildings, they already do. And they will, particularly in those rural areas, will be creative about how they get out and reach those rural communities. I mean, the outreach centres, I think, are listed in the report, but they are predominantly in the rural areas and are based around places like Wooler Fire Station, Albemarle Barracks, you know, up in Bellingham, there's a small children's centre there. So, but additionally, we've done things like use play buses in the past to get out to rural communities, and we'll be looking at that again. What I was on the webinar yesterday, and what was made very clear is that there probably will be some capital resource made available, but not to build buildings, to kind of refurbish buildings to, as we have been doing, to create these spaces that we want to do in existing buildings. So it may well be, depending on what that looks like, that we have some flexibility about how we use that. I think in terms of your question about the staffing, I think that's a really good point. And one of the things that is going to be part of the funding potentially in year 2 will be looking at workforce, and we've already, one of the stakeholder groups is looking at workforce, and we've started having some conversations about how we can grow our own workforce for the future. In a range of different roles that will be needed to develop family hubs in the future, because you're absolutely right, there is a national there is a national issue in terms of social care staff, and we absolutely recognise that. So we've already started having conversations and thinking about that. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does, thank you, and that's reassuring. I have a slight problem with the virtual bit of it, because parts of my ward in particular don't have the capacity to actually join in anything virtual. You know, the internet is still a big problem. So will that be addressed going forward?
Yeah, definitely. And we're not just going fully virtual. It's going to be a hybrid model. So there will be direct delivery and virtual. That's the plan.
That's great. I think all those possibilities have to be there, because certainly in our area, the internet's a problem, but also for outreach centres and getting into the main centres even, the public transport's a problem as well. So it has to be made available across all those areas, I think. Great.
Okay. Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask about how the stakeholder and implementation groups are made up.
Can you repeat it? Sorry, we're competing out there with a backup plate.
I know. So it's just how the stakeholder and implementation groups are made up. So who sits on those groups? I think you've touched on the funding a little bit, but is there a funding plan in place after this initial funding ends? And my other question would be on the youth spaces. What service user involvement has been done in developing these services and the spaces that you talk about for the youth service? Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, what was the first point?
The stakeholder groups and the
yes.
implementation groups.
Yeah, they're doing really well, actually. The main implementation group is kind of all this sort of, I guess, strategic leads. So head of midwifery, head of health visiting, quite a broad sector as well. So we've got data people, IT people, governance. So the implementation group, and it's got about 25 members on. Then the stakeholder groups are made up of sort of the managers, the health visitors themselves, the midwives themselves, but very, very, very popular so far, very busy. And working quite well. They've only had about a couple of meetings so far, because this is fairly new. And in terms of the next big job for us to do is to get our parents and our families back on board. Pre-COVID, we had very good, we had parent champions, we had parents standing in schoolyards having chats about our services. And we've lost that a bit during COVID, to be honest. So we know that's the next big job to do, and also doing some direct work with young people to develop the spaces going forward. So there's plans in place for all of that. And I'll let Mary answer the funding question.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what Jackie said, in terms of the implementation group membership, we've got membership right across the piece. So this isn't just about kind of some of those core children's services. It also includes, we've got representation from libraries, we've got representation from birth registrars, because we want birth registrations. I mean, we did before the pandemic, but we're reinstating that around birth registrations in buildings, because we know that there's evidence to show that's really beneficial. And Jackie's absolutely right. We do need to do more stakeholder consultation. We do already have some young people spaces in some of our centres that were designed by young people. So we do have a kind of a model of having done that previously, but we absolutely need to do more of that. In relation to the funding, I mean, we've been very lucky in Northumberland in that we've retained quite a significant proportion of our early help funding, and have a real commitment from the local authority to do that, which we're very grateful for. We've obviously received our additional indicative funding through our Supporting Families grant for the next 3 years, which will help with this development. And as Jackie said, the webinar yesterday confirmed that there will be 3 years funding available. We don't know what the level of that will be, and we don't know what will happen after the 3 years, but I think it's obviously very positive that they're assuring that level of 3 years funding, because I think that gives some ability to plan and develop what we're going to do.
Right, okay, Councillor Swinburne, when the whacker plate kicks off, can you all try and speak up or move your microphone closer, because I can see people struggling. Councillor Swinburne.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you for this report and the content of this report coming to this committee. Excuse me. And I'm really pleased to see and hear the information. That for a long time, that many people have thought of Sure Start of being up to 5-year-olds. Members of this committee may recall the work carried out with regards to exclusions, which was done under this committee. And as part of that work, we sought clarity and we tried to make sure it was recognised that there was a difference between early years and early help. And early help can come at any age of a child, and it's not just for early years. And we've tried to make that clear. And the reason I say that is because, as it says here, it's 0 to 19, and was mentioned there, 0 to 19 to 25. So that early help can come at any age of a child. What we're seeing here is, and as we tried to say on the exclusions work, it's not just for the child, it's for the family as well. And this is what we're trying to explain is going to be there in a more centralised way, co-locating with other services, signposting families, etc., etc. And we're trying to get this message across with this to say, we're not just talking about 0 to 5s, we're talking about any age of a child. The help is going to be there for the whole family, for the support. It's a much better response and service which can be provided to residents when we can centralise the support required. I fully support this report, and I'm really pleased to see the work that's going on to provide a better response for our residents and our children. Thank you.
Fair point, well made. I see nobody else, so I'm keen to move on. Thank you for your attendance. You're free to go if you wish, but thank you, Jackie and Mary, for that. So I'm going to move on to item 8, report of the Children's Principal Social Worker. Sue.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having sight of the report and considering the priorities that are at the latter end of the report. The priorities come from our key issues, which are the impact of the pandemic on practice and service delivery, recruitment and retention of social workers, manageable caseloads and practice improvement. Now, when we're thinking about those elements, what we did was we've encouraged the staff to partake in a health check survey, because it's very important for us to be able to hear what our frontline service practitioners are telling us, so that we can adapt our I suppose, strategic position to meet the requirements. What they're telling us, that there's a strong and clear social work framework, signs of safety. We've done a lot of work in terms of implementing that. The model is very much about working with families as opposed to. The model is very much about working with family networks, with professional networks, making sure that when we're no longer involved, that those families have a real kind of foundation of what to do to support. As we all know, it takes a community to raise families, and so the signs of safety element fits into that. When we're thinking about effective workforce planning, unfortunately, it's an absolute national issue in terms of recruitment of experienced social workers. Therefore, we're doing a lot to grow our own. We've even gone from our academy model, we've even implemented now the apprenticeship route, which is very much looking at acknowledging people who are loyal to Northumberland. So it's with, apologies, is that sound making it difficult for, is it better with 2 on?
Pull it closer.
Shall I pull it closer? No problem, thank you. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes. So in terms of the recruitment and retention of staff, As stated, just yesterday actually we were interviewing for our academy again. We're very much for the Grow Your Own. It's a national issue in terms of experienced practitioners. So therefore we've also gone along the apprenticeship, BA apprenticeship social work route, and we've sourced people who have been loyal to Northumberland, actually, staff from within Northumberland, to complete that degree. They're coming to the start of that is coming, where we'll be having 3 practitioners coming through the ranks this year, and then it's an ongoing process that is year on year. When we're thinking about safe workload and case allocation, we're very mindful that I'm proud actually of the fact that our caseload data is reflecting that we're trying everything to make sure that caseloads are manageable. Thresholds are being met at the correct place. We're very, very appreciative of our early help offer in Northumberland, which supports that intention in terms of foundation building and making sure that services are provided at the right time to actually stop crisis intervention where possible. Now, the practitioners who are doing all of this work at the front line, we're very conscious of their well-being. We're very much a learning culture. Our leadership is very much about supporting the staff who do the frontline work, treating them with the same respect as we would want to treat our residents and service users. Service user voices are very, very important to us. So through quality assurance, what we do is through our audits, a priority for us to speak to service users and children. That is also reflected in the Assessed and Supported Year ASYE portfolio. Feedback is collated through that as well from service users. It's very important we're hearing what's going on out there for the ones who require our service. In line with that, with the wellbeing element for our social workers, and also I think it's very important to acknowledge our non-social worker staff who we rely heavily on so that social workers can fulfil their role in terms of the social work support assistants, the admin support, the residential support, all of those non-social worker roles that support the social workers to do what they do. Supervision is key for us. We're very, very sure about making sure that we're speaking about reflective supervision as well as case supervision to make sure that there's a rounded approach to supporting our practitioners to fulfil their roles. In line with that, continual professional development is very important. We're very keen to make sure that we keep people on the front line. The advanced practitioner role supports that. It's a role, a term of or a route to progression with keeping people on the front line with direct access and support to families and children. Safeguarding children, it's everybody's responsibility. So in terms of the strategic partnership, I'm very proud that we've got strong links with our multi-agency partners. Actually, COVID has brought about a positive in terms of the virtual kind of remote working, where we've had a lot more attendance by multi-agency partners at care team meetings. This is all very good when we're thinking about networks for families who they can support, they can access support from at the correct time. And in terms of COVID and the impact of that, we're all conscious, aren't we, of the hidden harm if we're not at what, we've encouraged, and we're very grateful to our leaders who have supported staff to come into the offices. The academy model has been where practitioners have been in the office. They're learning by osmosis from each other, from the managers who are sitting there. New staff, it's very important that, they're given the time to walk before they run. And we appreciate Councillor Anna Thompson coming to the academy to understand what the model looks like. And in terms of, we need to acknowledge media headlines, things that are going on, COVID, and we're trying to do a lot to support staff. Referral rates, as you can imagine, have gone up significantly, which impacts greatly on capacity, but we're doing everything we can to make sure the staff are supported to be able to fulfil the role effectively. I don't know if anybody would like to ask any questions.
Right, any questions? Councillor Anna Thompson.
Well, no questions, but I would just like to again highlight the good work of the Social Work Academy in Sue. I've been there. It's a fantastic thing. It's a thing that other local authorities are looking to copy. Northumberland has issues that other authorities in the North East don't have, such as our rurality and our border with Scotland, so Scottish social workers don't have the same qualifications, so that it's not as easy to move people over the border like the way it would be between Newcastle and North Tyneside. So if we didn't have our own social worker academy and be building our own social workforce, our numbers would be nowhere near as good, and that's down to the hard work of Sue and the team. I'd also point out that none of this exists in isolation, and the previous report we had about the family hubs, if we can get that system working and get intervention into families sooner than what it would have been, then that will take pressure off the social work system. So it's all about looking at it in the round rather than just at one particular point of issue. Thank you.
Can I also acknowledge, please, that our staff sickness rate is lower than the other areas of the council, which I think is a real testament to our staff, you know, during this very challenging time. And, you know, we just want to acknowledge that as well.
Well, the recruitment, the recruitment is not a new problem. When I sat in this chair 10 years ago, whatever, it was a big problem then, in the agency and what have you. But anyway, Kath?
Thanks, Councillor Dodd. I just really wanted to say, and I've said this before, but I will say it again, social work is the hidden emergency or crisis service that doesn't often get the recognition that is needed across the country, and is often blamed for or you know, it's castigated when something goes wrong. What isn't seen is the actual phenomenal work that goes on behind the scenes, where we help to make the lives of thousands and thousands of children better every year as a result of the interventions that are offered, but we only ever see the ones where things have gone wrong. And really just to say a huge thank you to all of our staff who have worked tirelessly throughout this pandemic, and to have a sickness level that's you know, at the level it is currently, when previously it has been quite a significant challenge, is no mean feat really. So just thank you to all of the staff for their tireless work in helping our families within, and our adult services actually, and our adult social workers for helping all of our families and our vulnerable residents throughout the last 2 years, and always as ever, but particularly throughout the last 2 years.
Yes, you are correct. It is the hidden, it's what we don't see that we don't know. Right, I can't see. Oh, yes.
Sorry, Councillor, I just think as a committee we should echo that as well, because to be honest, I think that it's been a sterling effort from social care, and particularly the fact that the academy is in existence, I think is testament to the local authority. I think we spoke last time about the fact that this was a real centre of excellence for the North East. So anything that this committee could do to help with that, I think is really important.
Noted. Councillor Watson?
I echo what's said from Kath there. Some fantastic work from the social workers over the last 2 years of the pandemic, and really they adapted very quickly when we all had to disappear and go and work from home. So yeah, just commend that's been a great effort from all the staff. I just wondered, you know, we can't underestimate the importance, and you touched on learning through osmosis. So are all under WorkSmart, all touched on the AYSE staff, but are all social workers, children's social workers, able to access the buildings throughout the county at the moment? You know, is that something?
Graham?
Yeah, certainly, because of the nature of social work, where staff have needed to or required to come into offices to get that support, we've managed it safely, making sure it's in line with risk assessments. But we have had staff back in the offices because of the nature of the work does require, I think, immediate positive peer group support. And so, as Sue's described with the academy, so starting social work virtually really wasn't the way to do it. So we did that with the ASYU. We've done that across all of our social work services where people need to come in, and we've rotated that around to make sure they get the peer and management direct support that they've got. There have been a range of virtual ways of supporting that staff have all appreciated, but actually that face-to-face stuff's important, and we have managed that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, I see no more hands. I'm going to move on. Thank you for that, Sue. I'll move on to item 7, NCC, digital workforce and digital work-based skills. I'll go to Audrey first, and then to Neil.
Thank you, Chair. Just to talk a little ahead of the detail in the report, and to remind everyone that you've had a number of reports recently to this committee, and members will recall that we've had a skills strategy, we've had a curriculum and economic research, And indeed, at the last Facts Committee, we had the annual education report. In particular, in that report, one of the sentences and statements I made was about actually post-pandemic, we are all living, working and learning in a very different world. And so much of that is much more digital. So this next report is going to lead you into a development leading on from all of those strategies. So I'll hand over to Neil to talk about the detail.
Right, Neil, floor is yours.
Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as Audrey suggested there, that, the Northumberland Strategic Skills Plan that was on the agenda for Cabinet in December 21 had the digital skills and the digital workforce of the county as one of its major priorities. And this paper, as out today, is one of the steps to answer that digital priority. I think we could all agree that during the COVID pandemic, the digital sector has become particularly important in our lives. Actually, the digital sector more broadly has probably been impacted less, it would be seen in economic terms, than other sectors, and actually ended up, after a small wobble, ended up thriving within the pandemic period. The sector is in absolutely exponential growth as technology evolves very quickly, as the adaptation of that technology into our lives and our working lives enhances. And actually, the remote working side of things as well is producing even more opportunities within the digital sectors. Just for example, cybersecurity, as we work on more and more digital platforms, more and more workforce to deliver the cybersecurity required. Cloud data, for example, how many times do we now use cloud storage capacity rather than actually using solid devices? And ultimately, these all require workforce and skills specialists to actually keep this infrastructure working behind the scenes. And whilst the sector is in exponential growth with around in the North East region at 26% above average salaries in the sector, and having 16% currently of jobs posted being in the digital sector or digital related, the opportunities are huge. But in the county, we don't yet have sufficient defined and accessible pathways into that digital sector. And to be noted specifically is the fact that a lot of these roles that are posted now are work anywhere roles. So people within Northumberland, young people, have the opportunity now to train and become skilled to apply for jobs much broader than Northumberland and actually access those much higher salaries in a much more remote way. Hence, the education priority is to put in place these pathways to actually access these roles and do them, from within Northumberland. Currently, we have a small digital provision of full-time courses within our Northumberland skills service, and that is predominantly for full-time learners. But what we don't yet have sufficiently is the ability to support employers with apprenticeship delivery and skills delivery that is directly to progress from the full-time courses into that work-based provision, and that is what this paper sets to put in place. What we would look to do is to actually publish an education and skills funding agency transparent tender to appoint a digital subcontractor that was sufficiently specialist to deliver what the employers and the current technologies in the sector need in terms of skills. And that would sit within Northumberland Skills as a function within there. And it would be managed and the governance would sit within Northumberland Skills. To actually tie that specialist subcontractor into our that specialist provider into our education system, we would also look to appoint a digital development lead to begin with a 2-year fixed-term contract, and that would triangulate the work-based skills provision in the digital sector with the employers, with schools to raise awareness of the career pathways, and also to work between our skills service as well to create that pipeline from school through post-16, potentially working with the college as well, and into the work-based programmes that whichever specialist subcontractor who was appointed would be delivering. And I think as an addition to that, there's an advantage for the county council itself and its digital workforce internally within information services. And I know that HR and OD are currently looking to recruit a cohort of 10 to 12 digital apprentices, and that would be supported by this subcontracting specialist digital provider who could also support the delivery of that internally grown talent for our Information Services Directorate. That is the three elements of the paper. Thank you.
Right. I mean, this pandemic has, for people like me, increased my IT skills no end. I probably wouldn't have done that, but, you know, anyway, Guy.
Thank you, Chair. I hope the committee will endorse and welcome this report. It's come at a perfect time with COVID, like you say, working from home. People are doing more of that. But also the government and Openreach have completed a large digital rollout across the county. I know where I live, which is a rural area, my internet speeds went from 2 megs to 50 megs in the last year or so. So this isn't just confined to urban areas anymore. The area I represent is dominated by the tourism industry, which has the lowest wages of any sector in the northeast. And people often say, what else can we do to still live in our hometowns and villages but still earn a decent salary? Well, this is exactly the sort of thing that you can do living in a rural area, not having to move away from your home but still earn a decent salary. So it's really something that we need to be promoting throughout the county, and it will have an impact on our homegrown IT force here at County Hall.
Okay. We count, and I see no hands. Can we endorse that? Oh, Audrey.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick note to add that actually what you'll have recognised throughout Neil's presentation and discussion on the report is this is a cross-service integration report, so it's a really good example of working across the corporate services within the council, both within HR, OD and within our digital development workforce, and it perfectly nests within the overall Northumberland digital strategy as well.
Thank you. Right, move on. Item 8, Family and Children's Services Committee Work Programme Monitoring Report. I don't think we've got anything to add. No?
No, I would just remind them that the meeting's on the 21st.
Urgent business, I have none, although this is the penultimate last meeting of...
It is. Penultimate last meeting.
What means you hope to be at the next one. So, if the meeting's cancelled or whatever, we do wish you well.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure Wayne, who's watching this meeting, apart from getting a lesson in how to get the meeting down under nearly to an hour, because I believe the last one was nearly 3 hours. So, he's probably going to send us a message now. So thank you, Kath, with all our hearts, and we'll see you in April 21st, and we move on from there. Thank you for your attendance.